to the next sequential ingredient is cumin seeds. Black pepper and red chili pepper is very subjective to how hot or mild you want it, depends on the taste. If you cannot stand red chili pepper, you can just skip it altogether. You can just use black pepper, but it's good to use some source of pepper because that's what gives a taste for rasam. And red chili, the species I have is very hot, so I'm going to use just one. Depending on the species you use, you can change the number of these chilies. For this whole mass, I'm going to use just one. Split it into two. About 1/8 of a spoon or 1/16 of a spoon, small amount of fenugreek we use, which is menthium. Don't use too much of it, it gets bitter, but it's very important to use that because they say it's extremely good for your stomach. The thing that dominates the taste of rasam is dhania and jeera are maximum, and then the chilies depending on how hot you want it. So I've used about, just for purpose of demonstration, I used about 6 leaves of curry leaves, 6 curry leaves. I'm going to just trim them into smaller pieces. Put it here. So now I lightly roast it. The purpose of roasting is not to cook it or to burn it. The intensity, the reason is because all these ingredients have built-in moisture. Especially coriander has built-in moisture, which in a grinder it gets very flaky, hard to grind. So when you dehydrate it, it's very easy to make a powder out of it. So you heat it to the extent of removing the moisture. One way to notice how it's happened is you can wait until the curry leaves are wilted. So now they have moisture, they're very green and fresh. They look dehydrated, so slowly you mix them together. The reason you do it is because coriander has a lot of air in it, so it acts as a good insulator. So if the jeera at the bottom, it burns fast, whereas coriander takes time to burn. If you don't want to burn it, you just heat it to evaporate the moisture. Denser ingredients, you try to get them on top and see that the jeera doesn't become light brown. If it becomes not a problem, but if it becomes black, it will change the fundamental taste of rasam. It will be good in its own way, but it's going to be a different taste. So now it's kind of reasonably wilted. You have the confidence that it's going to grind in a dry grinder. So we'll put it off now. You can also, other indications, you also hear crackling sound from the jeera. And that's till you can stop it. Hear it? That you can see how well it's wilted. This is typical coffee grinder. That works well and is very cheap to buy the coffee grinder too. You add the hing or asafoetida. For this, it's hard to define the tablespoon. Small amount you put, because especially if you take the block, it's very strong, so you don't need to put too much. On the contrary, if you use this one as a previously prepared powder, you get it, then you can use liberal amounts, say half a teaspoon, half a tablespoon, quarter tablespoon or something, no problem with this if you use it. But this block one, you can see the consistency of the powder. Okay. One point to note here is, back home, olden days, if you prepare wholesale amount of rasam powder, which once a month or so my mom or grandmother used to do it and store it, then at that stage itself they used to put turmeric as root form itself, you get dehydrated turmeric, and combine it so that it is self-contained. In North America, when we make it here, we avoid putting turmeric in this because turmeric gives a lot of stain on plastics and the counter, etc., the yellow strong stain. To avoid that, that's why while cooking the tomatoes, you put it along with that. That's all. But if you prefer putting turmeric, there's nothing wrong. Then you have to watch how much. So you don't put too much turmeric. Maybe if you put it as a powder, maybe 1/8 of a tablespoon or around that you can put it. Otherwise it will dominate the turmeric taste. And tomato again is subject to your taste, how much you want. There's nothing like less or more. Yes, less is there. At least put 1 tomato of this size for the volume. You can put more, not a problem. But if it's too much, it becomes thick. Any way you can cut it. There's nothing like standard way.
Oh, okay.
Okay. About half a tablespoon of salt. But you can adjust salt later on always. Again, don't put too much turmeric. Too much will make it very yellow and turmeric dominates the taste. So small amount like this, just what? 2 pinches of turmeric you put in that. Experience I know about, about 1 tablespoon of tamarind should be enough. The taste, any sour sauce you can use lemon or, but then depending on that the taste is going to change because all of them are sour. The type of sourness varies with all these things. So if you don't have tamarind, yep, you can use lemon, but if you're using lemon and you don't put it at this stage. After everything is cooked, at the final stage you put lemon. Because sometimes lemon, when you boil it or cook it like that, it gives a kind of bitter tint. To avoid that. Lemon always, anyway you cook, you want the freshness, you avoid putting lemon in the beginning. You put it only in the end. Yeah, similar. So the tomatoes are well cooked. And then you squeeze them so that all the essence of the tomato goes into the water. If you put high, no problem. The reason heat is important is because when it's liquid, there's no risk of burning, but then there's a risk of frothing and overflowing from the dish.
Okay.
To avoid that, you do it. We see that our tomatoes are all kind of cooking and almost cooked stage. You try your best to squeeze them out. See, sometimes what happens is if you're very picky, suppose I get some guess if I'm very sensitive of how I'm making, then I cook all the tomatoes separately and then extract the liquid out and throw away the solids and just put some liquid tomato extract and do it. But for family, on a routine basis when you make, you don't have to put those efforts. There's nothing wrong in having chunky tomatoes like this. So that's what I'm doing in a way which normally at home if you cook you do it. So it's important to squeeze it off so that you don't have tomatoes sitting there and all the essence goes into the water. Try your best to do that. And in this stage it's a good idea to get the first taste, to see a balance of tamarind and salt only and tomatoes, to see the intensity of sourness and salt balance without putting the other spices yet. Since I have pre-cooked the dal or thoram paruppu and it was in the fridge, it gets a bit hard, it's good to soften it a bit. For that we take in a bowl. Take the hot rasam liquid that we have here, the extract itself, 2 or 3 spoons. And the amount of dal adding is a very subjective thing. Some people don't like dal at all, so you don't have to put dal at all. Without dal you can make the rasam. Some people, especially Mysore, where my grandmom lived, they used to put a lot of dal, almost like Madras people, sambar, you feel it. So it's a wide range, just based on your taste. But then the more the dal, the intensity of the tamarind reduces as the dal intensity increases. So when you fine tune after putting out the dal, you have to taste and see tamarind balance is okay, otherwise you can add a bit more. Allow it to boil for a minute. Then get some curry leaves. It's any amount you can put, but at least put some 6-7 leaves. Because sometimes they're expensive, you don't even get them in the shop. If it's available liberally, you can put them. Otherwise, put even 3-4 leaves are enough. Restaurants and all, you get it as big leaves, some people put it, no problem, any way you can do it. Put the curry leaves here. Allow them to come to boil for a second. This is the stage when you put the powder. For this volume, I'm going to use the same tablespoon concept. I'm going to put 1.5 tablespoon on this powder and then taste it in and see if it's fine. It should be fine. The experience, I feel that, but anyway, let's see that. Simmer for 2 minutes, taste just to see the balance of the spice powder, tamarind, the salt, everything's okay. So you can fine tune at this stage again. It's the final fine tuning stage. While that's simmering, what you can do is you can cut some coriander, fresh coriander to garnish.
While you're cutting, do you know how different it is?
Basically a South Indian dish, and it's mostly made in. It's called Rasam in Tamil Nadu or Tamil. And I think it's mostly popular Tamil and the Kerala Brahmin, which are also Tamil origin. And Andhra they make it, and Mysore also they make it. Mysore they call it Saru, and in Andhra they call it Pulusu. These are all Rasam. So different names, but in principle they're same, although there are subtle differences. Mysore sometimes in weddings, when they make this rasam, they put some fresh grated coconut. There's nobody else in the country does that way. Andhras, when they do, they put a lot of fried chilies and all in there and make it that way. So now what we'll do is, when this coriander is ready, I'll quickly taste the final balance here. Should all be done about 2 minutes. It's boiled rasam. Taste and see if the spices are all okay. I think the balance is all fine now, and we shut it off. Fresh chopped coriander leaves. Then you can take either ghee or oil. I prefer, of course, diet people should not worry, oh, I'm eating ghee, I'll get fat, because as a ratio it's such a small amount, it doesn't create a dent in what you're doing. Use a bit of ghee, just a small amount of ghee, as you can see. The small spoon, it comes to about half a tablespoon of ghee. Half a tablespoon of ghee, I melt it here. The moment it comes to melting, put some mustard in that, let the mustard pop, close it, kind of medium heat. You don't want to burn it, but on the other hand, if the heat is too low, it doesn't pop. You have to hear the crackling sound in that. Almost when it's half, where you feel it, shut it off. With the residual heat, it's going to crackle now. Done? You shut off the heat. Wait for a second, shake it so that the ghee completely pops. It's done now. And you pour it in the rasam. You get the sound. So this is rasam finally done. Good to buy these in Indian stores as opposed to Canadian or American stores, because their small volume will cost a lot, and plus they may be pretty old stock there. Indian store, they can't afford to have old stock. It gets sold out fast. Tur dal, or in Tamil, it's called thoram paruppu. Okay. You cook it either in pressure cooker or even outside with about 4 times the amount of water, 1:4. It cooks well, and because it expands pretty well. And when it's cooked, it looks like this, complete cooked form of thoram paruppu, well cooked. In the shop, you get it either as solids, a solid block like this, which is the plant raisin, also compounded. Otherwise, they call it compounded because mixed with other ingredients and grind it up. You also get it in a powder form, but I suggest you use the solid form. This is called dhania or coriander, cumin, or in Hindi is called jeera. Red chilies. This is called fenugreek in English, seeds. This is mustard seeds used for garnishing in the end. It's ripened tamarind from the tamarind plant, you get it. When it's dry and ripened, it's like black, as it's shown here. It's available in the shop, Indian stores, either in a block, complete black one like this, or it's also available as a paste with just the other ingredient to make it a paste is water, that's all. It's available in Thai stores or Indian stores. I prefer the Thai store one, and you have to watch out and see that there's no salt added in it or sugar. Some places they add other ingredients. It should be just tamarind paste with some water, that's all. Of course, we prefer always tomato, although even without tomato we make it, because in some parts of India either tomato was not available olden days or it was very expensive. Like in Hyderabad we used to get it only 2 months in a year, so we used to make rasam without tomatoes. This is the beefsteak or any other species like the round tomatoes which has more water content. They are fine for rasam. And the Italian plum tomatoes have less water. So for rasam I prefer this one as opposed to the plum tomatoes. Of course, if it's not available you can always use plum tomatoes. It has less water. These are fresh curry leaves available in Indian stores. Don't use dry curry leaves. If you don't get it, it's better to use no curry leaves. This is fresh coriander leaf.